All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is an emergency meeting of the City Council of the City of Devine. It's February 2nd, 2023. It's 5:18. We're here at the George S. Woods Community Center. All council members are present except for Debbie Randall. This is an emergency meeting is required due to the Bain well having a leak that would require Public Works to determine how many customers will have their water temporarily shut off to assess the required repairs and to make the required repairs. In addition, the Warhorse Drive ground storage tank has exceeded its life expectancy and needs to be replaced. This item will potentially have an immediate effect upon the drinking water of the citizens of Devine. All right, first item here that we have, and I want to thank all of y'all for showing up early. When we got the kind of the news on the Bain well earlier, it was either we have this meeting today or we do this all again tomorrow. And JR was already going to be here to walk us through, so we went ahead and JR showed up early, and I want to thank JR for doing that and to go ahead and take care of this today. Item 2, sorry, is going to be discuss and consider the Bain well. This is the leak repair and the testing of valves. This is going to be Rob, but we are definitely on the Bain well. It's old. The valves there are very old. We have a leak that came up a few days ago, and in the process of trying to sort that problem, we went to turn off some valves that were never installed but were on our map. So this is going to really affect your district a lot, okay, David. But Rob, go ahead and tell them what the plan is and how we want to address the plan.
There's a couple of valves. There's one on like McAnally, one on Zigzag that when we shut down, it's going to basically shut down everything in that area. The valves that we thought were there that were on the maps when we had dug that up, we potholed all that, and there's no valves there. So the part that would have actually isolated the leak and we could work on it without affecting anybody are not there. So that's our other alternative. Otherwise, we do it live. We do the fix the leak live, which all that water that's in town would flush out of that. We'd have to wait till everything basically emptied out in town, all the pipes emptied out, and then we would be able to work on it. So if we're able to isolate that and kill those lines out where we can work on it without any water coming back through, then that's our ideal solution to it. So it's those valves that aren't there kind of hurt us. So those two that are the one on McNally, the one on Zigzag, yes, are there. They are in place. So those two are tied into that, yes. Yeah. So basically, we would just notify everybody in the area, give them some time, make sure they know what's coming, and then shut it down and work on it, and hopefully get it, taken care of, get it resolved. So it's just the age of that well. That well is 70 plus years old. So
how long do you project this project will take?
Once we'll probably have everything in place. So once we shut down, we're getting ready. We're working on it. Yeah. So that's the plan. So hopefully we can keep within that. We should be good. So.
I mean, at this point, we have to do what we got to do.
Yeah, we don't have a choice at this point to do that. Now, after that happens while we're working on it, we would install valves in there so we could shut it down later. Which there's only one valve by the well that we were able to work. There's two there. One of them is completely frozen. I mean, it's a 70-year-old valve. What are you going to do? The other one we worked it's working, but it's not completely shutting it down. That part we were working on was that was a 6-inch. Yeah.
It looks like it's going to affect everything, kind of more or less south of 173.
Yes.
In your district,
Right.
kind of, sort of. The problem is just like those valves that he was mentioning aren't that we thought were on they are on the map, but they were never installed.
Correct.
We also don't know in this situation when we go to cut off something where it's going to affect either, and that's one of the things that's of concern is the fact that we don't actually know where those lines necessarily. I mean, we have maps. Don't get me wrong, but the map wasn't right on the valves.
I understand.
We don't know.
I understand.
So This isn't something that's going to happen in the next few days. They're going to do some exploring on the line to see where they actually can put valves and where they can actually like make it work, because the part that's above the ground right now is just needs to all be removed, right, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Everything that's above the ground needs to be removed, so now it's a matter of digging in the ground to seeing how far back we've got to actually go before we can make that new connection point and come back up again. They're going to do that exploring first. So like I said, this isn't something that's going to happen over the next couple of days. This is going to be something that's maybe at the earliest, maybe towards the end of next week at the earliest. Yeah. So, and then we would try to give people, if we knew that, try to give people at least a couple of days notice ahead
That would
of
be
time
nice, yeah.
that this is going to be. But again, we don't know how broad it is,
Right.
and that's the thing that we don't know. We may give letters to people who don't have any water problems, and we may not end up with a person who does have, because we just don't know.
Well, I'm sure we'll put it on the website, you know, and
Yeah.
just let it. Are we going to try to do this in-house with our folks?
Initially, well, once we dig and see exactly what we got, if we need to put an inserter valve, then we'll have to call somebody in. Right.
I have a couple of questions. Now, who's doing the exploring?
We are. We're digging down. We're
In-house?
finding the line.
And so,
yes.
do we have people that are certified by the Texas, do they have their water certification and their licensing?
Yes, the two that are
Everybody
doing
has
that.
it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The two that are doing the
Yes.
digging are, yes.
Okay, so the two that are doing the digging?
Yes, Pete and Simon, yes.
Okay, Pete, Simon, good. And what was the earliest that we noticed we had this issue?
The leak started Saturday. That's where we started.
Saturday?
We've been digging and looking for maps.
Yeah, I know
and
that
doing-
we had the well discussed prior to
Yes.
this.
Mhm.
And so, but it's finally giving out? Is
Yeah,
that
yes,
correct?
now we're getting to that point where it's starting to. Yeah, this was several months ago. We
Yeah.
talked about it. But,
And it's $2,853,375?
That's the different
Or is it
Yeah, we are
Ah,
only
okay.
discussing
the Bain
pipe.
well?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the cost on that?
We don't know, we won't know yet.
Until after the exploring?
Right.
Yes, till we find out what
Okay.
we got.
Pete and Rob came to us today to let us know, hey, we've got issues.
So Pete and Simon are doing the, is that
Yes.
who are
Yes, they're
certified?
licensed.
Pete and
Yes.
Simon are licensed?
Yes.
Rob, you are not licensed?
No.
Okay.
Robbie, I've got no problem going door to door, giving out notices on my
Right.
part. I mean, I'll be willing to help whatever I can.
Okay.
Yeah, and let us know, and
Yes.
I'll be willing to go also, David. I know we were without water for a couple of days, and it was pretty stressful for our district, and some of us didn't get notification prior, and so I'd be more than glad to help also.
Thank you, man.
All right.
So the ask right now is to go door to door to inform folks that their water might be shut off and to begin exploration? Or is there more of an ask here?
No, it's I think there's really emotion on this necessarily, other than that to acknowledge that we're going to move forwards with this. Obviously, if we know there's going to be a problem, we've always said that we would let y'all know ahead of time. When something happens over here and something gets cut off and we don't realize that pipes are interconnected because they're not on a map, we can't let anybody know about that. We know ahead of time on this one, and that's why we're letting y'all know.
Roger.
So, because it is going to be a very much of an inconvenience on those individuals in your district, mainly, who live over there, and yeah.
The good thing, but once it gets done, we'll be in great shape afterwards.
That part will be, yes,
Yeah.
we'll be good.
Yeah.
Just, we also keep in mind the age of that
Yeah.
motor, that whole well system itself, so.
So this happened Saturday. Why are we just now finding out?
We went through, we're exhausted all of our resources trying to figure out what we can do, and we're to the point where there's, I wish there were valves there 50 years ago that they put in, it would solve the entire
Well, I
problem.
know that I've been sent an email that council's not to micromanage by our interim.
We're not gonna.
But
This is not the time or
if we
place for
could
this.
please be notified, that would be great.
Not
So that
the
way we
time.
can
Not,
prepare. Thank
Stop.
you, Rob.
not the time or place to have discussions about that. We're discussing this. That's on the agenda.
It is the agenda item,
The
sir.
agenda is not about
It is
asking
the agenda
emails. No, it's
item,
not.
so we can be notified.
No, that's not what this is. So
Do what we gotta do, but, so
Yeah,
say.
that's all we can do.
we'll make it happen. So
Yeah.
thank you, Rob. All right. Do we actually need to do something on this, or do we just, we just need to acknowledge that we all acknowledge the fact we understand what's happening?
Until they start digging to see what we're facing, right?
There's nothing to
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
decision on
All right. All right, no action on this item. Item 3, discuss and consider the ground storage tank of Warhorse, placing the storage tank due to,
Oh, Corey, I'm sorry. Did you let them know about what you were saying in case they get into a bind and the water is that we're gonna provide this, if we have to?
oh yeah, the contingency plan? No, I didn't mention the contingency plan. We have a contingency plan. So what happens this one, the plan is that we're not going to turn off or start doing this testing or whatever we're doing until after about 9 a.m. So that way people can be gone, right? And then if we get 2, we're going to work with either Food King or Walmart or one of them and discuss with them about having bottled water in case we get late in the day and we see about 5 o'clock. If we still don't have it back on yet, then we will reach out to individuals who we know need it in that district or your district.
Yes.
Who may possibly need bottled drinking water, and we'll make those decisions on how much we have to purchase at that time or what we need at that time based off of how the day goes.
We're letting folks know that water's going to be shut off. We just ask them to fill bathtubs, 5-gallon buckets and such. Because
that can be in the
bubbles,
notice.
yeah, bubbles only go so far.
Yeah.
Good, sounds good.
Yeah. Josh, we'll do a door hanger, and then once we do the door hanger, we'll send it to the mayor so he can make sure to approve it before we give it out to everybody.
I'd also like to propose that we could connect with Moses West, with the Moses West Foundation. They have the atmospheric water generators that produce clean water. And I think that if he knows that we are in a bind, he'd be more than glad to set one up somewhere. So I'd like to propose that so
Well,
that way we can consider that.
we're not even on this agenda item, nor was that on the agenda to be discussed. So again, we're already on agenda item technically 3. So discuss consider ground storage tank on Warhorse, replacing the storage tank due to companies not able to do repairs needed due to the age of the tank. So I know that this was mentioned in updates previously. I believe it was mentioned at City Council meeting in July as well, that this ground storage tank is getting to the point that it's just not being able necessarily to be repaired. It's 71 years old. This is the one that's over by the football field. So Rob has been reaching out to different people and trying to get them over there, trying to get them to look at it, because we do need to make some just basic maintenance items. And essentially, as soon as they find out the age of the tank, they're not even interested in having a discussion because the tank is way past its life expectancy. Actually, JR, what's kind of the life expectancy on those tanks? About 50 years?
About 50 years.
Yeah, so we're like 20 years past. What the reason why this is on this agenda is because they need direction on which way we want to go. Obviously, we're going to need to replace this tank. That's not the question. The question is do we want to go down the road of trying to get grants, or do we go down the road of trying to get certificate of obligations? 2 very different processes, obviously. Certificate of obligations, those are done more in-house. Maybe they take a few months kind of things to prepare. If we go down the grant process, we already have a grant for, which well are we working on right? The Carrizo well that we're actually working with right now.
That's the 2022, 2023, I believe, or 2023, 2024. Yeah.
And we have to remember that the grant cycles are only every 2 years, so we're not going to get this grant cycle because we're out. We wouldn't be able to apply essentially until I guess maybe next fall for the following year to the 24, right? So we would be a year or more out on that, and then as we all know with grants, you've got to apply. It's not a guarantee. And that whole process is, oh God, how long have we been working on this other one? About a year almost now. So you're talking another year. So now we're 2 or 3 years out, and then the actual construction time on this from the point that they start to the point that things are, because the plans have to be reviewed by the state or just by who has to review the plans?
We have to submit them to TCQ.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. Plans have to be reviewed by the state. We got to go through the state process. Basically, that's going to be almost a 2-year process. So your two options are we either do it with a grant, which is about going to be about 5, possibly 6 years out before we see replacement, or we do it with a certificate of obligation, which means that we're more like maybe 2.5 years out. Our fear, or the discussion fear, is because we know we're at the end of the lifespan, right? We know we're at the end of this. Is at what point does something actually happen? I mean, nothing's happened now, thank God, knock on wood, but we are at the end of its lifespan, past the end of its lifespan. At what point does something actually happen? And then we'll have all sorts of problems. We'll have problems with the state. We'll have problems with providing basic water to our citizens. We'll have all sorts of problems if something happens to that storage tank that's there right now. In front of you, there's numbers. You're looking at, with the everything, you're looking at about $2.85 million. That's for a tank that's basically a direct replacement of what's currently there at 500,000 gallons. We were having some discussion earlier that I think we probably need to kind of future-proof it and probably need to go slightly larger, maybe 600 or even 700,000 gallons. Just because when that was built for 70 years ago. That was built for that time, and I think we probably do need to upgrade a little bit just to protect ourselves. And of course, once we get the generators in, right, we're going to be pulling from that tank to replenish the overhead tank. So that will help us out with that whole situation that the state's requiring with the overhead tanks and capacity and all those things, because we'll have more ground capacity that we can pump into the overhead capacity. Questions?
Well, it seems to be that even though it's a big expense now, if we wait, it's just going to be more expensive later on down the road. It'll cost more. So I'm thinking, me personally, it's just the sooner the better, because we don't know how long this thing can actually hold up for us.
Like I said, I want to make it very clear, there's not a problem at the moment
Right.
that I'm aware of.
Right.
But that's not, that we're looking at the future and knowing
Right.
that it's 20 years past its life expectancy.
Exactly.
It's not going to hold forever. This is something that,
Yeah.
well, you weren't on council 20 years ago, I was
No.
going to say. Whoever was on council 20 years ago should have looked into, but here we are now today, in the middle of everything else, and they need direction, because they need to start getting us numbers, because obviously
Yeah.
these are estimates here, and then we're talking about changing the tank size, so things are going to change a little bit, but this gives us numbers. It also allows us to operate and get this switched out on our time versus something happening and it being then the state's time, or we're in an emergency situation where we got to do it now. We need to take care of it before it ever becomes that problem. We need to take care of it while it's still just a age problem and not an actual problem.
And we all realize, and it just, some things seem to just take a long time to get processed and what have you. So if we wait to the last minute, no telling how long it's going to actually take to get results. So I'm kind of leaning towards, the sooner we get started on this, the better. But that's just my own personal opinion.
JR, you have anything you want to add to my spill? I know that you briefed me on all of it earlier and exactly where we were standing. Not that I didn't know previously, because we all knew previously. We knew back in July. That's why council had notes and updates. So, Debbie, you had something.
Yes, in all these numbers here, if we decide to go with certificate of
Obligation.
thank you, that 120, the grant admin would not be in that number, correct?
We would have some fees from the other, but it would not be the one almost $130,000. No, it would be, because the grant administration makes a percentage, and when we do the certificate of obligations, I don't know if it's a percentage or a straight fee, but I know it's not this.
That much money.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So now, of course, either way we kind of look at it, though, you have to remember that we're going to. This This is the part that's just terrible. Really should have had somebody else deliver this news if it's bad news. But we're gonna have to, we raised, how many years ago now it's been since we raised water? 5 years. 5 years. And I know at that time we had a discussion that we were gonna hold that price for at least like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And we have done that, and we have done that in the face of inflation, which has been astronomical and has affected them getting items and us getting items here too. I'm sure if we would have done this 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been 2.8, it probably would have been 1.8. Like, this is just where things have gone in the past 5 years. To pay for this, we're going to have to get the money from somewhere. In our actual reserves in that, in the sewer fund, because this isn't from general fund, it's just from sewer fund, is in all of our CDs and everything, if we pull every penny we got, it's about $1.9 million, which doesn't cover this. Regardless, we can't use all that money because we have to keep a certain amount in reserve, and I think it's like 6 months of reserve, of operating reserve, or else we get dinged if we don't have it. Like, the state's not happy with us, we grants, whatever, even the when we do the auditing stuff, like, that's not what they want to see, that we have enough money in case revenues stop today, we have enough money to continue, which isn't really about that. Really, it's about having money in case something goes wrong. We could use some of that, like I said, some of that 1.9, but that's not going to cover everything that we have here.
Plus, doesn't some of that 1.9 go towards our payment on the loans for the water transmission?
No, I think that's being covered. The water line transmission stuff, that's not part of that 1.9. The 1.9 is just what we have in like CDs and other funds they're not part of the, not part of the debt service.
Okay.
So based on the contract, though, we do have to pay for that loan out of water fees.
Correct.
So we're going to have to increase them, I guess, at completion of the project regardless. We want to proactively get after that.
Well, no, it's not completion. We would have to do it at the point we took out the loan.
Now, we raised the prices.
Or took out the
Well, I wasn't
certificate
on
of
council
obligation.
yet, it was just before I was on council.
Okay, so
They
these
raised the
prices-
prices to cover the loan costs
Okay.
of the water
The
project.
asbestos, yes.
But I was just concerned that we had to have some of this money for that, but I guess we don't.
No, the debt service is covered in what we have for our normal yearly outlay. This is literally the extra that we have in reserve, like I said, in various places, CDs, whatever, that we can pull together. But again, we can't use all of it because we have to keep a certain amount in reserve.
Correct. So when we did it, I don't remember, I don't know that I was even involved in it at the time. Well, yeah, I guess I was. The certificate of obligation, if we did this for, let's say, 2.8, let's just say the whole tomato. When we do that, then we'll know how much we need for income for the loans, because at that point it would tell us how much we need to pay per year or whatever it is.
Whichever way y'all direct right here tonight will be the way they go and get numbers.
So we'll know how much we have to, we're gonna have to raise the water.
It is,
Hopefully not
it
much.
won't be as much as before, because before we were raising to cover
A $9 million
almost $9 million,
loan.
and now we're only raising to cover for 3.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or actually 2.8. And in all fairness to what we said at that point and promised to the public, we have fulfilled that. We did keep our water rates at what they were at for the multiple set years.
A little longer, yeah.
Actually, a little longer, yeah. I think we committed for 3 years at that time. And nobody wants their water rates to go up, but we have a tank that has to be replaced. So,
What percentage of our water is held in that one tank?
I'm sorry?
What percentage of our water is held in that one tank?
Well, it's a 500,000 gallon ground storage tank. That tank is probably the most important tank in the system because the wells that pump the Edwards, everything goes to the ground storage tank. From there, it pushes the water up to the elevated and then distributes throughout the city. So if we, for some reason, have an emergency and that tank goes out, we'd be in big trouble.
What's the size of our other tanks? How many other tanks do we have and what are their sizes?
I think the Ingram tank, I think it's 250,000 gallons.
Okay.
And
Which tanks are talking overhead? The elevated 250,000 and 200,000.
Well, but we can't fill an elevated tank without filling the ground tank first.
Right.
Okay, but how many total ground tanks do we have?
One.
Oh, that's the only ground tank we have?
Yes. The other ones, like the other wells that have, like Harrison, the bank, they both have ground tanks there. They pump into that and then it pushes to the big ground storage tank.
Okay, so it would have 72 hours of water if that one blew out?
No.
Approximately?
No.
No?
No. 72 hours of water? No.
Well, I'm thinking that's what we had during the freeze when electric was out. Roughly 3 days.
Okay, no. It will not last 72 hours, I will tell you.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question. Can we request the $2 million on a contract that wasn't fulfilled? Can we request that back? Through some type of litigation? So that way we can pay for our water, a new water well? There, in a contract at the golf course? We had over $2 million that went out.
Again, we're on a not.
Well, we're
here on this
looking
one.
at resolution, Mayor, and I think that this may be a resolution to that, so that way we
So
can provide
you're
water for the whole city.
actively pushing for lawsuits from this council table.
Well, I'm asking that we hopefully have the $2 million that we as the citizens paid, so that way everyone can have water. We're about to lose this, and if this tank goes out, the whole city will be, as JR said, in big trouble. And so we do have a possibility of that. Those are some type of solutions or resolutions, because I think that our citizens having water is more important.
I don't know in any world where active litigation is a resolution to a problem. So, but we need to address what's here in front of us, and we need to give them direction on which way we're going to grow. So we need to decide if we want to go through a grant or go through a certificate of obligation so they can get the numbers together for us for a follow-up meeting.
I'm in favor of a grant, but how much have we looked at this tank to give an estimate here? I mean, do you see anything that's actively waiting to break? Or is it just old and can we get another 5 years out of it? Adding more debt to the city is my big concern.
The problem is, what's this number going to be in 5 years?
Yep.
We're 2.8 now.
And if it goes out, then we got no choice.
Oh, no, I
Yeah, we have no
revolving,
choice.
We're still 2 to 3 years out anyway, so if it's out in a month, we're.
JR, what is your opinion on
With
that?
if we
What
went
is
with
your
a loan
opinion?
versus a grant, I'm gonna play your devil's advocate right now.
Please.
If we did the loan versus the grant, a loan we can have set our obligation, certificate of obligation. If we did that, it could be set up within a few months, correct?
Yeah, more or less. That's what it's been in the past.
I'm just saying, if today we said, let's do it, we could actually have it done by, what, April?
Probably not that quick.
I'm sorry?
Probably not that quick, but it'd be,
That's
you
2
know,
months.
I
Pretty
think
quickly,
that
yeah.
Okay, May or
It-
June?
It
Can I
won't,
say by
June or
summer?
July, June or July.
June or July?
it won't be years, yeah.
Okay, and then, so we're looking at a year for getting it done versus a grant that's maybe 4 or 5 years. That's where I was trying
Yeah.
to play.
I thought you guys just said there would be 2 to 2.5 years to take a loan out because of state requirements.
Right,
No,
or
no,
grant, a
No, you
grant.
said grant would be something closer to 5 years.
no. It would be it would be, I'm talking to the finished end product.
Okay.
It would be instead of it being 5, maybe 6 years on a grant to the finished end product, it's going to be about 2.5, maybe 3 years to a finished end product.
Mayor, this is why I'm with Walton Planning, and I'm giving him this, I kind of just gave him this.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Ryan Cunningham, Samco Capital Markets, the
We
financial.
just found out we're having an emergency meeting.
I saw that it was posted, so, but I actually worked with the city in Mark from 2006 to 12 at a prior firm, so I've been here, it's been, over 10 years, but anyway, it's great to be back. So, yeah, I'm just kind of made aware of the situation now. You could issue certificates of obligation, which you've done in the past, and pledge, either taxes or your utility system revenues for this. That'd be the quickest way to get the money into hand. You have to publish the notification in your legal newspaper and on your website, advising the city the citizens that this is your intention to do this and for an amount not to exceed. So if you're just gonna do this, 2.9 million of certificates of obligation, that needs to run. It takes about 2 months for the process before you could then issue. That would be the fastest, maybe total about 90 days. Now, one thing you can do is you can also do a reimbursement resolution, which allows you to take the funds you already have and use it with the thought that you're gonna reimburse yourself with the proceeds from the certificates of obligation if you need designing, engineering, these costs, and to get the ball moving even faster to get money in. So that's an option that you could do. So, overall, it'd be probably about a 90-day process, would probably be about as quick as it could be to funds in
So
hand.
there you go. There's your answer. There's 3 months, Debbie. About
Okay.
3 months or so.
Funding, not for installation, no.
No.
Yeah.
Oh
Is that for
God.
funding?
No, installation is taking, a long time. A long time. I think that JR told me that installation on these
Yeah,
can
I
take
think that you're right.
8
You
weeks
have
to
that.
install once they actually get to the ground, but they got to be built because they're all custom built. And they've got to be this and they've got to be that. That's why it's almost the process is more like a 2.5 year process.
Okay, so,
So
and you're saying just to get the grant, so it'd be 5 years plus?
5 year, it could be it'd be 5 or 6 years. It's going to take probably 2 to 3 years just to get the grant, and then another 2 years to be able to do. Then we have to start the process, and then it's another 2 years, kind of a thing. So
And the grants we
build and
get, you
stuff.
have to remember, they're only like $500,000.
Yeah, it's not going to be all of this. It's
Yeah.
going to be the grants we've been getting lately. They have been like 500, haven't they?
The next one that we're working on is 500,000.
Okay.
So.
We work with the Texas Water Development Board and those, subsidize get a lot of grants, but that's a long process. That can be a year or two. We're working through this. Honestly, the Texas Water Development Board's gotten hard to work with over the years with more and more requirements. As things get more complicated. So, things that we thought would be, last year. So, that you gotta get on the, intended use project list and approved and then make it meet their criteria, which you very well could, but that's a very long process. That discounted money comes at a cost of time.
I guess I'm not seeing the emergency to move this quickly to obligate us to this much money. I hear the urgency from which you're speaking, but if we've already been operating on this out-of-date technology, I guess, for 2 decades.
Well, it's not outdated. It's the same technology they're going to be using to build the new one. The deal is it's a steel tank, and steel doesn't last forever.
Right.
So, what y'all are doing tonight isn't actually to pull the trigger on anything other than to give direction on which way they need to find numbers. And that gives y'all time to think about it or whatever you want to do, but they need direction is what they need. So that way they can get something together, because when you actually do need it, it's too late to do anything then.
Yeah. We're out of luck at that point.
Yeah. Go ahead, Debbie.
So, let me back up, because I think you're right, it was around July timeframe that Rob had told us that, no, JR came to us and said, we need to look at this tank, because weren't you doing a small repair or something then? Like, you had something minor go wrong, but you realized, oops, we got issues. This could turn into a huge snowball. Okay, you fix those minor issues. We all know that's not gonna hold forever and a day.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm kind of with you, Dave. I think we need to find us a way. We're already looking at 2 years before it's fixed.
Yeah.
And then that's with us all praying this silly thing holds together that long.
And to be clear, we're not at that point yet, but I cannot, what we know today, I can't guarantee tomorrow. We have learned this sitting at this table.
Yes, that's why
So
I'm
we have no
already
idea
doing
what
that.
tomorrow is.
Ooh, I don't want to be here on the day that thing lets go. And
No,
we don't have
absolutely
a
not.
plan in place, and I have already been working on it. I'd rather us be proactive. It might bite us a little bit financially, but we have a pathway that isn't going to bite us as bad as an emergency.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh.
JR, what's your recommendation? How should we follow this from your point of view?
My recommendation is to have that tank replaced. The existing tank will be in operation while this is being constructed.
Right.
And once it's completely done, then we can switch over. And then at that point, we can decide what to do with the old tank to, demolition or whatever. But it's going to remain in operation until the new one is complete.
My question is,
Ready to go.
what process do we follow through with in order to get there?
No urgency.
Exactly. What, in your professional opinion, what is our length of time?
Well, I mean, we still need to put the plans together. And that's going to take a while because there's site work, there's piping, there are valves, all kinds of calculations we need to do. And get that together, put it out to bids. Hopefully we get a great bid. And then the construction actually starts, which is, according to like this one company, just once they have all the parts on site, the steel plates and everything, it's going to take 220 days at least just to erect the tank. Once we get to that point where it's ready to go, then 220 days more.
If what I'm hearing is that you would like it to be done sooner rather than later, but do not feel comfortable issuing an opinion as to the urgency.
As to, right.
I don't think that's a fair position to put him in.
I asked.
So, we all at this table should be able to know if something's 20 or 21 years past its life expectancy, that there should be some sort of haste to our actions. Yeah.
So, JR, how long do you, in your professional opinion, will the tank hold? More or less, not, it's just an educated guess.
Oh, that, I can't tell you that.
Okay.
I have no idea because right now we're at a point where we fix one hole and another one pops up because another one, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
something else happens, and that, and then something else happens. It's, once that starts happening is when you need to start looking at replacing it. And even based on the age, it's way over past its due date. I mean, the steel is already starting to get weak.
Can we start working on the plans and work on funding in parallel? Or how does that work?
But once we get the funding, then, I mean, then we,
Also, we don't work on plans at all until we get funding.
Well, we need to know how we're going to pay for it, obviously. And if we're asking them if we're asking JR to do stuff, we have to pay him as well.
So I guess my question here, what I'm getting to is, if it breaks in 3 months, then we're looking at how many millions of dollars to just go.
Oh no, if it breaks in 3 months, we're not looking at this price either.
it's going to be a much higher.
Right, with the money to go.
Yeah. This is, we just do it with the numbers that we have now and kind of take our time. And this is an estimate as well. If it breaks, that's an entirely different situation where you have to call in all sorts of pumps and stuff and things to get, no, it's not this price. Probably add another couple mil to that. Okay. Well, we're getting close to the other meeting needing to start. So,
I'd like to make a motion that we do a certificate of obligation for not to exceed 3 million and have the city hall go ahead and start the number process on how we can pay for it without killing our residents. Like, I don't know how you guys are gonna do that, but, anyway, my motion is to do the certificate of, start the certificate
go that direction with the certificate of obligation.
Not to exceed 3 million.
I agree with you, Debbie, and I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Anyone
Nay.
abstaining? All right, motion passes. All right.
Mayor, we'll be working with Mountain Planning.
Yes, as soon as y'all get those numbers, let us know. If we can work them into the next regular meeting, we will. If we have to have something or have something in between, then we'll figure it out. All right, so that concludes this emergency meeting. A motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. All right, that one's done. No, wrong one.
Copy of that. David, where did you get your copies?
This,
Yes.
from the office,
Oh,
they may have some there.
okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just easier to read out of
Yes.
there.
Let me get.
They may have some there.
Not only my friends, but my family.
It is cold and I forgot my jacket. Similar you don't. So, yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, thank you.
Right, sir. Oh, man. Wow. Okay. Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I was just needing a yes from one person. I'll take it. All right. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the governing body of the city of Devine. It's the second day of February. It's 6:01 p.m. We're here at the George S. Woods Community Center, and all council members are present. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Item 2, discuss and consider for the council to move forwards with bond election and select projects. All right. Y'all have the big sheet here in front of y'all. And you'll have a sheet next to you that's gonna be this sheet with the yellow heading. That's gonna be what was included with the pricing that we actually got. Those items were, put together based off of items that, we had already kind of sitting at City Hall that we knew that there had been questions, concerns with whatever over the years. Or that have been actually discussed in meetings, as far as addressing. All right. So let's, you'll see across the top of this, the big sheet. At the top is your total on these projects for everything is 91.73 million. After you figure in payments and everything, you're sitting at 148 million or 148.8 million. All right. Let me go ahead and get my spill, and then we can get into everyone else, I guess. So if we were to do a total, right, of 148 million, that would actually be a tax burden of approximately $33,000 for every single person who lives here in Devine. And that would also end up being a tax rate of like $3 per 100 evaluation. Thankfully, the state of Texas said that regardless of what people want or are willing to vote for, we can't actually exceed apparently $1 per $100 evaluation. Meaning that we can actually only do about $15 to $20 million worth of projects, in addition to our current tax rate, which is 0.49 for.
4913.
Okay, yeah. I also want to note on this thing here that you'll see that these bonds are put together with a 20-year payoff, meaning that if we max out our tax rate now, we will not be able to approach any tax hikes or any new bonds for the next 20 years, essentially, unless our town grows exponentially, so as to offset the tax burden for the citizens. This obviously makes me worried. I know that we have talked about many things at this table, including building at some point in the future a new city hall and community center together, revitalization projects downtown. It's funny because I actually put this together a few days ago, and I actually mentioned water towers and storage tanks as being projects we need to think of as we as we move forwards. We've also been know that our sewer facility. We're talking, of course, you got to look 20 years down the road of different things that we may need like extra money for that's not within our normal tax flow. But if we max out our tax rate now, we won't be able to touch any of those. We won't be able to mess with revitalization projects or a new city hall or a community center or library or any of those things. Again, for 20 years, unless our town grows exponentially. I want to point out that exponential growth is not necessarily something I think Devine wants. And we honestly don't have room within our current city limits that would allow for exponential growth. And unlike Lytle or say Castroville or even Hondo, we don't necessarily have anybody knocking on our door, approaching us and to create exponential growth within our city limits. And to be honest, I don't think anybody here on this council table is necessarily working on anything that would create exponential growth or push our city in that direction. The projects that we are working on, like the art mural initiative or with the chamber, or even the land out on the highway the city owns, which we need to get back on that project. But anyhow, those are not necessarily going to create exponential growth. Rather, those are simply going to help make our town self-sustaining, which is a very different type of growth. And it's not going to give you the funds necessary to reapproach if we max out our tax rate. For some perspective, if we max out our tax rate of $1 per 100, we will have a tax rate that's approximately 3 times higher than that of Fair Oaks Ranch, Garden Ridge, and Helotes. We will have a tax rate that's approximately 2.5 times higher than Alamo Heights, Almas Park, Lytle, and Bandera. We will have a tax rate that's approximately double that of Balcones Heights, Cibolo, New Braunfels, and the city of San Antonio. The only city in the San Antonio area that would have a similar tax rate to this $1 per 100 would be Poteet. For a little more perspective, we would have a tax rate that's 4 times higher than Highland Park, Texas, which is up by Dallas, which is listed as one of the wealthiest cities in Texas on a per capita basis, and has a typical home value, according to Zillow, of $2.37 million. And a $1 per 100 evaluation would also be 5 times higher than the tax rate of the Woodlands in Houston, where you can literally go down to the mall and buy a Yankee Candle and a Gucci purse and a $600 or $600,000 Ferrari all within a block. I also want to note, just so we're clear, that just because we have new or that we want new or we're going to create new, right? It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. Just because it's built to some strict standard that we obviously really can't afford, or else we wouldn't be looking at doing a bond, doesn't mean it's going to actually fix our problems. You can easily go look at the brand new intersection they just constructed over at, or not intersection, I guess the corners of the intersection, at 132 and Colonial Parkway that TxDOT just redid to their utopian state standards. And it now holds more water now than it did previously before they reconstructed it to, I guess, not hold water. Anyways, they've had to redo 173 from Devine to Hondo multiple times in the past few years because it keeps falling apart, and that was all built to state standards. We can look at Four Corners over here. That's all state over here. 173 and 132, it floods. That was all built to state standards. So we can't just say that we're going to work on these projects and we're going to get done and everything's going to be perfect, because we know that even with very high state standards, even here locally, it doesn't actually make perfection. It's a little bit of a similar situation with the park. If you look here at what was actually included with the park, you'll note the fact that we're always going to be a couple of baseball fields or a couple of football fields short. We're never going to have basketball courts. We're never going to have playground equipment or outdoor exercise equipment or walking trails, because none of those were actually figured in the price we got for the bond here. And of course, all that ignores the fact that we don't actually have a location to build a park at, because those who've approached the city about doing so haven't actually ever found a location. So again, to wrap up before we go into discussion, we can't exceed the dollar per 100, which means that we have only about $15 to $20 million worth of projects that we can do before we hit that cap, which means that council will have to decide what, if any, projects they want to move forwards with for public vote off of the list here that we have. All right. It's yours.
Okay, sorry. I didn't want to cut
Go
it.
ahead and let council know how y'all formulated this and what we're looking at here.
Okay, great. So,
If
yeah,
anybody
so we
doesn't
got
understand.
a bunch of the different interests of different projects from staff, as far as what maybe the city could do or not do, or just to look at kind of ballpark, what would the impact be on the tax rate. We assumed 5% growth for the next few years out to 2027, and then flat from there on out. Obviously, that's an assumption. It could be higher, it could be lower. Just on what the city, it depends on how far up you want to push the tax rate, and also if you think that you're going to have to, do a certificate of obligation on the utility rate side. The utility rates don't drop off for another, it's flat going forward with the loans you get through the Water Development Board, so there isn't like there's a drop off there. That a new one would keep it at the same level. So we just try to use some basic assumptions. We run our debt service schedules at 20 years, 5% interest rates. It'd probably be a little bit lower in this market, but as you know, there's inflation out there. Costs of projects continue to escalate. Interest rates are getting a bit better than they were about 3 months ago, but where they would be, 6 months, 3 months, a year, so who knows? It's very volatile right now. So we just wanted to just kind of give you just how much each of these different projects it would impact the tax rate. As the mayor said, you really have this legal limit of what you can go up to. But if you were to push right up to that limit and then your taxable values went down and it pushed the limit above it, by law you'd have to then refinance those obligations at a loss. So we always encourage against that. Sometimes we see this with school districts that are smaller and they want to do projects and they haven't been able to do the infrastructure that they wanted over the years, and they want to go right up to their legal limit. We always advise them as well not to do that, because if you have a hit in your taxable value, it's going to push that tax rate up above, and then you're going to be forced to refinance your existing debt at a loss, and that's something that's very difficult to recover from at all for a small city. So we would definitely not encourage you to go right up to that thing, but you're in the community, you have the pulse, what you think people would want, what people are saying their needs are, what they think, how much support you think there would be in the district. It's really we're here to provide information and have you give us direction. Now, if you were to call it, you can call an election 2 times a year in May and November. The deadline for calling one for the May cycle is February 17th that you'd have to call it. So, we're getting pretty close to that deadline. So, and then if that were to pass, you could issue later this summer as you want. Before you get your taxable values July 25th, and then set your tax rate from there. So I don't know if you want to get into any of the projects. I mean, what we see with a lot of places, what they do is if to kind of gain confidence in with the citizens, maybe they do streets or roads, something very fundamental, do a smaller amount, have that project be very successful, and then come back in 2 or 3 years and have sort of a bond program going forward. Others sometimes, hey, we have all these needs, we want these. And sometimes with streets, that's one of the most, in drainages are some of the, people want the most. They see that as a fundamental role of government. We had one right by Austin that went out for $294 million, and it was a big chunk, 10 cents on the tax rate, and it got, about over 60% approval for it. So, just sort of, you have to weigh out what you think is a need and maybe what these products are more of a want. We can't really tell that, but we're here to provide all the information that we can. We try to be conservative in our assumptions, so we under-promise and over-deliver, run at higher interest rates, conservative taxable values on the growth, but who knows what will happen with, housing market values. We don't really know, but we try to be conservative in what we presented for you.
Does your drainage project include drainage ponds and, I guess, mitigation tactics for keeping the sand from clogging everything up?
So I couldn't speak to the specs of what all the projects were that went into the cost and all that, so.
No, we didn't include any drainage ponds in this. It's just strictly streets, curbs, and some sidewalks.
Do you have a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. And so, what we did include was for drainage, as far as the big area was the Colonial Parkway area. Mm-hmm. And my dad had designed a storm drainage system that would alleviate those drainage problems from Colonial Parkway north. And that's part of this drainage. And also the other areas that were issues were Crouch and Windy Knoll. We have a drainage plan. We have actually plans for that whenever the city's ready to go on that. But what I consider drainage, especially for a small town like Devine is to have curbs where you can channelize the water. The street is considered a channel where water can be pushed out. And eventually where all this water ends up is in Burnt Boot Creek. And that's one thing that we've been working on for years, trying to get monies from FEMA to help us with that, but nothing's ever come through. So there are several things on here that they're necessities, but just have to pick and choose what you want to do.
So the reason I asked about the drainage is previous conversations you were saying would fill up with sand pretty quickly anyway. It kind of made it sound like there was no sense in putting drainage in. But if we don't put in drainage, well then our streets are going to get covered with sand regardless, and then city staff's cleaning it up and it's degrading a lot faster. So I guess why put in streets if we can't keep them maintained?
Well, you can't actually afford streets.
Yeah, we can't do the streets.
I see that, but we're still going to pave streets in the future.
Yes,
Pave a few streets
it just won't be here.
Well,
But I understand your point, yes.
Yeah. I'm definitely in, I would like to see the sports complex. I think that's something that revenue can be brought back into the city with the sports complex. I do know that other cities have them and they use them effectively, and they host tournaments, other types of events, and I think that would be essential for our children and the community. And so I am all 100% for a sports complex in that aspect. And I think that it will bring back revenue to the city. So it's, we will be spending, but we can retrieve that money back. And I think that our children deserve that. We have dilapidated structures, and I think it's essential to have not only physical, emotional health for our kids, and learn how to play. It's a very essential aspect in growth development as an educator. And I think that that's something that we really need to consider. But thank you.
I sure do love my kids, but not for that much money.
well, we'll get money back.
Well, let's see.
9
Sports
million.
complex was what, 6 million
9.7.
or 9?
9.7.
Well, once you figure in all the overall cost, it's 9.7. We
Yeah, but
we
the
could-
initial amount.
the initial amount is
is
6.
6, yeah.
It's up on the top.
Yeah.
Um,
I do want to remind on that one, like I said, that figures 2 baseball fields, a couple of base at least. If we can get more, obviously we get more at that price. But at the moment of what they figured, that was baseball fields and the associated stuff that goes with them, which is like fencing, seating, concessions booth, etc.
Plus the land, like you said.
Yes, we need to figure out the land situation, and with internally knowing how much it costs to run a large facility, we need to also figure out about current money, $250,000 a year to pay for. We're gonna have a facilities person that's gonna do nothing except make sure on bookings and stuff. We're gonna have to have at least 2 or 3 groundskeepers. We're gonna have yearly maintenance. We're gonna have, whether that's paint, whether that's stuff like that. It's gonna be weed treating. It's gonna be fertilizer. It's gonna be fixing things that get broken. So with that, right, we've got to have the land, and we need to find an extra $250 in our budget, which we don't have, which means that we'll actually, to do that, we'll probably need to increase taxes at the next tax round to cover the $250 a year here. Just
Living costs, I agree.
so, because we can't just build a facility, you've got to maintain it, or else you're going to have facilities that are dilapidated and not functioning. We've got to maintain if we're going to do it. So, Debbie, you had something, I think I interrupted you before I started.
You covered.
I covered
was
it.
gonna say, we don't have land for it though, so that means
But-
an extra however much money to buy the land. But we gotta find land to buy.
Does the city own land in District 1 and District 2?
We don't own anything in District 1 I'm aware of. And the
Well,
only thing
we would need about 50.
Do we-
The reason I know this is because years ago with Parks.
You were on Parks Board, and y'all all looked at
Yes, I went
this.
through this with Little League and whatnot. For this type of deal, you're gonna need, well, we're also adding soccer fields, so you're gonna need about 15 to 20 acres, because you need parking and you need like.
Of relatively flat land,
Well,
because if it's not flat, then the
Relatively
cost.
flat would be
Yeah.
utopian, as you say, but we still need about 20 acres to do this. So it's either we find land to buy that's close by, or we find 20 acres within the city limits. That I don't know that we actually have 20 acres, like, let's say, over here or over there, together. We might, if you put everything together, it might be, but not that.
School just bought 50 acres, didn't they?
Huh?
Didn't the school just buy like 50 acres?
That means we'd have to buy it from them.
I think we can help the school at some point in the future, maybe, to meet in the middle, like make us.
I agree.
Oh, you get to go make that.
I agree. Go to school
We
board
have
meetings.
already, well, I'm not even going to go down that road.
Yeah.
If you want to know more on that story, I'll direct you to ask Dora about the baseball fields from about 10 years ago.
I prefer to say not our problem.
So,
I would like to say, I think sidewalks and a modified curb would bring more growth, walkability, usability, and potentially more business revenue to the city compared to the other things. I still have questions about the drainage project. Also, is there maybe a way we could pave or clean up some of our main thoroughfares? So specifically Colonial, making our way up to the golf course. Let's see, Windy Knoll, maybe. That's not even that bad. I'm trying to think of the streets that are really bad, but we get a lot of traffic on. I know Colonial is definitely a big one, but that would require some drainage as well. So is there, and we only have till 17th.
Okay, I don't know what you're mixing things like streets, sidewalks,
Yes.
and drainage. Like, no, we have to pick one of the other, and you can't mix them.
oh, that's the thing too. Do you want to explain about mixing projects? About that we can't do a project in one area and then do a project in different, it all has to be in one area if we're going to do a project.
So like generally what the language will say when it's streets and roads, it'll say, Proposition A for improvement streets and roads, and drainage incidental there too, because that's, part of it, you have to have the drainage with the streets. Now, you can be sort of general in the streets, but or also can be a good idea to name the ones you're gonna specifically use that most people use that would be the most popular, because what we see happen is if, you know, someone's on the north end of town and they think all the streets on the south are getting repaired, like why am I gonna pay taxes for someone if I'm not getting the benefit? So you definitely wanna have, at least in all the different parts of the city, or the main ones, right? So, because otherwise it becomes a thing. But yeah, there are some things where you have, if you're gonna be different projects, you can't just all pile them into one proposition, because the Attorney General looks at that as like, well, the schools, like they can't include athletic facilities in with educational improvements. The same thing kind of applies to some of the city stuff. And this is where bond council gets in to parse out what can be done or not, but to blend them all together. You see, they don't want these sort of sweeteners in there or the other thing. They want them to be standalone. But there can be drainage, you know, incidental there too, with a street project, because they understood with the engineering and stuff, you have to have drainage with the roads too.
Although we can't do street project because it's $51 million.
That's what I'm saying, could we do smaller street?
Yeah, you can do less. I mean, this is, you know, what I think what the total, you know, needs of the city were, but you could do 5 million or 10 million. I mean, that's for you to give us direction on, you know, or identify which, you know, streets maybe need it the most and go from there. I mean, it's really up to you to give direction if that's what you want to do.
So technically, we have 30 miles of streets.
Mm-hmm.
We know
About.
this because we went, it's close. When we started our other street project that's taking forever. So it's $51 million for 30 miles. Okay, today. So if we're gonna say we wanna split that up into 10, okay, let's say 10 million, that's a quarter of 30 miles, whose district is getting done.
Well-
And on top of that, you cannot, this is 20 years. We're stuck with 20 years. That means 3/4 of the city will not get redone for 20 years.
Well, beyond that though, we've already had the 10-year breakdown. I think y'all gave us the 10-year breakdown a couple of years ago. I don't remember. Everything's a blur at the moment as far as when y'all came and gave us that. And to Debbie's point, we have to remember this is a 20-year payoff. So if you're going to be to do 20 years and you can't attack. Now remember, roads only technically last 20 years. We're real fortunate that the roads that we have in certain areas have held up longer than that. But technically, they're only really good for about 20 years. So if you redo a road now and with a 20-year payout, technically in 20 years, you need to go back and redo that very same road again. You won't be approaching another road. Beyond that, you have, if you do, we have 30 miles of roads, 10 million, we know it's 50 million at the moment, so it's 20, okay, quarter, okay, got it. 20 times 5, because that's what we're doing, 20 years times the 5 sections that we have to do, so that's $10 million a piece. That means that if we pave a road right now, it would be nearly 100 years before you got back to paving that road again if you're using bonds the entire way.
I'm thinking this in common. Get after some of these really tough issues we've been talking about we can't afford, and still continue using our annual budget to get what we can done. Just a thought. It's not something. That's not a hill I want to die on, but.
So.
Also, you were saying the sidewalk project? That's not with curbs. That's just putting sidewalks in. So if there's no curb on that street already.
Oh yeah, unless you actually do the streets the correct way with putting in a curb, you can't actually do the sidewalk project.
Let's put in sidewalks before you put in the street.
No, this is.
We put the
this is to go
sidewalks,
Citywide and
next
put in
to-
sidewalks citywide for $10.6 million. That's not the big streets, 173 or 130.
Yeah, that doesn't cover the state ones. The state ones is a different beast.
City streets. But you can't put a sidewalk in.
The state highways have.
There's
Some
no
have
curb.
sidewalks, not all.
There's a few sidewalks in.
We have a couple
David, go
here and
ahead.
there.
You've been real quiet on this. Go ahead and give
Yes,
us
it's been very quiet.
give us words of wisdom
Here
here.
we go. RJ, you said in a perfect world, oh, you're busy with that. In a perfect world, we'd need the curbs ideally for the drainage, because it would funnel it down the road or what have you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, I mean, about the sports complex, we've been talking about this for a long, long time, and it's way over. I agree with you on that part. When it comes to the sidewalks, roads, curbs, and what have you, I just personally don't see the benefit of addressing this issue if we're gonna have a drainage issue. Why spend all this money on cosmetic when the underground work needs to be conducted first? That should be addressed initially. Now, my question is, on the drainage, there's five items here?
No.
4? Okay. Does the drainage include all these or just individually?
It includes all those
All those.
items, but remember, it doesn't include, these were the major problems. There is still, I know there's drainage issues, Flipper in your district, there's some. I know on the backside of Angela's, there's some. I'm not even gonna deal with your district. David, I know that you're basically the creek situation is your biggest problem. However, back over on Zigzag, basically close to where Fred is.
Right.
It floods there as well. That's not on this list. And Debbie, I know you have
Leibold.
you have Leibold, which is on this list.
No, this goes parts.
This is-
This is Colonial to Leibold.
Um,
Leibold's its own thing, because it
It's
has
its
to go
own little
from
thing.
Ingram to Colonial.
Well, I was gonna say, I know that you have flooding issues on, is it Mount Vernon that comes down or whatever? What's the one that comes down in between everybody's houses where on the streets where y'all live, y'all have the street that runs down the
Well,
center?
that's near Monticello, you mean?
Monticello, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
by
a-
Monticello, but
there.
Leibold's puts it there.
There's
Right.
already like a little retaining wall or something.
Right. And I know that you have drainage problems when it does rain. Well, you were telling me the other day that it's sitting water over there at the golf course
Oh, well,
where the
yeah,
where the
because it
streets
doesn't
meet up
drain
because it
across.
doesn't drain.
The street, Malone,
And that was with no rain. It was just a wet day.
it was wet.
And then I know at the bottom of your hill, where we actually do channel, it's a long channel. Anyways, it works from the back side of the golf course, from the back road all the way across, and it goes into Burnt Boot, but not Burnt Boot. It actually goes into the property with the people with all the zoo animals. Anyways, I know at the
It goes
bottom,
then
I know at the
into
bottom
Burnt Boot.
down there, those houses also
Yes.
have, and the back side of
That's
Solic.
yours, But it's over there, yes.
Yeah, it actually ends up running into yours is what happens. But yeah, I know that you have, so that's, to answer your question, David, that's none of those. That's just what's here on this list.
Right. Now, I understand all of these topics, they're all important. They're very important, all of them. But I still feel that the drainage is the first one that we should address initially, and then take it from there. Let's do all the groundwork, let's keep the public safe from damaging, and lawsuits and what have you, and then we'll work on curbs and what have you in the future, and roads and the baseball field, the complex, and the sidewalks, and the 35 project. But if we don't have the drain work in place, we're spinning our wheels backwards.
I don't disagree with you on that.
I concur with your statement, but your statement leads me to believe that sidewalks need to be a precursor to drainage, which is counterintuitive. Can you help clarify that?
Well, I said in a perfect world.
No, I'm not. I'm saying his statements about needing curbs for drainage. I don't understand. What does the drainage project even include if we need to have curbs to do the drainage project?
Because I've lived in a town like what you're talking about. I've lived in a town where instead of having the modified curbs that are nice and thin, they actually have the tall curbs. And they actually use all their streets as drainage right-of-ways.
Yep.
And so that wouldn't necessarily eliminate all of these drainage projects, because some of these drainage projects include, like the airport, they includes channeling at Burnt Boot Creek. You know what, it wouldn't include any of those actually. Okay, but if you're trying to get drainage down to Burnt Boot Creek, if you use the roads to channel the water, it would be the most efficient way to do it in our situation versus doing everything underground for these other streets where we're having issues.
So this drainage project on here is underground.
Yeah, well, not all of it.
Not all of it.
There's the channeling, which has to happen no matter what if we're doing something. It's going to really be the Colonial Leibold situation that's going to be underground, and then the Crouch Windy Knoll that's going to be underground. The
Right.
airport is
Well,
about,
Creek, it's a creek, yes, but.
Yeah.
Because that's underground.
So we'll be using like Upstate Street? Is that the one that?
It's gonna give it, and that's the deal.
Yeah.
So when you do use your roads like that, you end up with situations like Upson, where that we do use it as a channel, which means that when it is heavily raining, technically everybody's street's gonna flood at that moment in time because those are the actual channels where the water's
Right.
going.
Exactly.
So, yes, perfect example. I didn't think about that. Thank you, David. So,
Well, that didn't answer my question at all, but I know what you're talking about, and that's how we do it up in Pennsylvania. We've got curbs between 6 and 20 inches tall to channel your water. But what is your proposition here for drainage then? I agree with David's point here, that that's the fundamental first step, but
Right, drainage is the first thing you want to consider always. Because you're going to be, you have to put storm drainage down to protect the citizens. You have to keep the water inside the right of way. If you don't have curbs, water just goes everywhere. It floods properties, it floods people's houses. This way, we monitor everything from right of way to right of way, set the curb height so everything slopes down towards the street, and the street collects the water and pushes it out. Because the way it is right now, there's no system at all. It goes wherever it wants to go based on the natural contours of the ground.
so your drainage project includes curbs.
Maybe to an extent.
For
No.
Colonial Parkway, I see what he's asking now. I didn't understand what you asked before.
Yeah, 'cause you keep saying
Yeah.
curbs.
These are actually-
So let me ask this. This is what he's asking. In my brain, it's coming out this way. Let's use Colonial Parkway as the example, because there's no curbs there, especially in that really bad portion. So are you saying this drainage project is to put curbs down, portion at least, of Colonial Parkway and do a underground fill or something, whatever you call it?
Yes, underground storage, like you're gonna have junction boxes, you're gonna have inlets that will channelize the water underground. You usually have that kind of a storm drainage system when your street capacity cannot hold the water. When it
So
exceeds
no curbs on Colonial, you're doing storage.
storage, taking the water out.
He's not
And-
putting curbs in this drainage project.
Streets are a separate thing.
Yeah, but if you have to have streets and curbs first, then why would you do, now, what he's asking is, this is no curbs, this is all for those two streets
This is just
anyway.
getting after four major drainage areas.
Correct.
And are you proposing pumping water out of a retention pond on Colonial then? Or how do you store it and remove it?
We're not planning on a retention pond.
You just said storing the water. What does that mean?
Water storage, we don't have any water storage. Water is collected in the streets.
Yes.
When the water exceeds the street capacity based on the height of the curb.
Yep.
Every street has its capacity.
Yep.
And because it's based on the slope, it's based on the crown. And so once the water exceeds that amount, that is the point at which you have to say, we need to have underground storage.
So we're not draining the water.
I'm sorry, underground drainage system.
Okay, okay, all
okay.
right.
Reinforced concrete
Okay.
pipes, junction boxes, inlets, to
So,
push the water away.
okay.
So that way, the water does not go over the curb and into private property.
Great.
So these two streets would go to Boot Creek?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, for clarification then, JR, the drainage would be directed where?
The drainage is going to be
Yeah,
directed.
like it's underground, but it's going to be directed where?
We're going to direct the water towards Burnt Boot Creek,
And then it's going to flow out Burnt Boot
through the
Creek.
creek, yes.
And we're already having issues with Burnt Boot Creek?
We have in the past when we've had hurricanes come through,
Okay.
and we've had issues with that.
That's also being addressed in this section.
Okay.
Brook Creek channelization is being addressed in that drainage project.
Is that correct? We're gonna increase the capacity of that or simply direct water into it?
Right.
Well, Burnt Boot Creek, we're planning to do a a concrete line channel to push the water out quicker, because right now it's just earthen, and like you said, a lot of it is maintenance, and when you have such a big channel like that, that it's just too difficult for people to do maintenance on a regular basis. It's always easier to push the water out through concrete.
What's your estimated lifespan on this drainage project? How quickly is it gonna fill up with sand and be unusable and need torn up?
Well, that's kind of it just depends on slopes, it depends on your contouring, it depends on a lot of different things.
Well,
Depends on
essentially, I
how
don't want us to
it's
spend $15 million on this and in
And then-
5 or 10 years, half the lifespan alone, we have to dig it up and
Have to
redo it.
redo it.
Yeah, most streets, I mean, they're designed to last 20, 25 years at least. You know, so when you do put in a street with a curb.
But we're
you
not
should
doing that
expect-
right now, we can just be doing drainage right now. So without proper channelization with streets and curbs, is this drainage project, or do we have to do these together?
They have to be done together for those areas that you are gonna have
Oh, the drainage
underground
won't get
storm.
done,
Okay.
because we can't do the streets.
Yeah, because you need to have an inlet, and usually inlets are elevated above the gutter elevation.
Well, that
So,
just
yeah.
took care of it, now we can
Yeah, that answers the
scratch
question.
that off, because we can't do it.
Unless we just do bonds for particular areas to do drainage in segments.
No, he just said, without redoing the street with a curb, we
I
can't
know.
do this
That's what I'm saying, we
drainage.
would have to do a project for each area to do the street, curb, and the drainage per segment. As you know, it sounds, am I wrong?
So you're correct.
Okay.
Spending 20 years worth of bond money on 2 streets and a channel. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna get behind that.
Not saying it has to be done, but that's, just.
So the drainage alone is 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what, between 15 and 20?
We can only do between 15 and 20 total, yeah.
So, I mean, don't.
And that's what we're locked into. I know they're projecting some growth over the next few years, but then again, as was pointed out, if for some reason our valuations go backwards, which they had before, they did in 2008, they did in the late 80s, early 90s, and all the real estate economists are predicting that it will eventually happen again. You won't see growth, and then we'll end up having to refinance that, so.
And, I mean, you could also do drainage with a certificate of obligation if you were gonna theoretically do for the well. You could also, that could be a project too as well. I mean, it depends on how big it is. I mean, generally, if you're going for these really big amounts, it's good to put it before the voters, but you're not required to, because drainage and streets, they're looked at as needs, not necessarily wants, and the city can operate somewhat, you know, as a business, versus, you know, like civic centers, maybe sports complexes are more for bond issues. So that's just something to think about. If you were gonna do a smaller amount, like the street drainage for 3 to 5 million, you could do that. But there's nothing wrong with taking it to voters either, but you have some different tools, and then you don't go to election, you don't have the cost of that, and you can, more flexible in when you issue, but that's just something to put out there. But there's nothing ever wrong with taking things to voters.
That's why I had the drainage and the curbs marked together for RJ to just kind of brief us on that. But I knew we would exceed the cost on it.
I don't see a way to make it make sense unless we just do certain areas and just do the whole thing. But that's a lot of money to go toward just a single area. Man, these streets are literally, I mean, like, part of Colonial's just in shambles. I'm sure you've got some areas in your district that are just as bad too, so I don't
Yeah,
feel good about
McAnally itself, it's
devoting this much
horrible.
money to just one area.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be tough in an election if the problem is just one area is covered, because the people that aren't getting that benefit, they're gonna say, well, why
Right.
am I gonna, have my taxes go up for something I'm not gonna get any benefit from? So you need to be mindful of the projects, like you said, that you select.
Flipper, any thoughts? I know nothing that we're talking about here actually really affects your district, but any thoughts?
I mean, of course, the drainage and everything, but I know we can't really do anything with that, but I was looking at the inner park loop over there behind there. We put roads there or whatever, right? That would benefit us if we get any businesses in there, right?
That's why we bought that
That
you were on
land.
council, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I can't, yeah. it's been forever now. That would benefit there. Now, there is, there's ways to work that. I think that we probably at some point need to have a terrorist board meeting on that. And I think that we probably need to just go ahead and start marketing that. I mean, I understand if we put in the roads and stuff, we would have a lot more control over it, which is one of the reasons that we talked about it and ran it through the terrorist board. So we could have more control. We could actually, if I remember correctly, oh God, Dora, correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember correctly though, we could actually get a loan off of the terror's money. We could actually basically get a loan. Am I correct in saying that? To actually pay for part of that?
That's how we did the purchase.
Okay,
Land.
okay. So we could actually do that once we, do that, technically do that again. So it may not be something we want to run in a bond item only because there are other options. There's the options of actually putting it for sale, right? Actually listing it with a real estate agent, getting it for sale, get with Lance Elliott, who with his contacts, and see if a company would want to come in and actually, work with us developing it, and then maybe offset some of those costs if they knew that, hey, out of this 70 acres, we're going to get 20 or 30 of it, we'll kind of work something. We also, we're going to apply for grants and stuff on that as well, but again, anytime we go down the road of grants, it's not 100%, it's only proportional, and we are in this huge waiting game that could take years.
You see, I was bringing that up because I know we've been advertising and we've been looking for businesses to come and look over here. And I was thinking, well, the sports stuff, we got land there, we could probably use some of it, and that will make the city some kind of money, and we can,
Now remember, to develop that land is going to be, oh Lord, where am I at? What's 7.2 million. So if you're going to put the sports complex there, beyond other reasons, you're going to have to add that 7.2 to the 6 million. So now your sports complex becomes
22.
No, it's going to become 13.2 million. If you do it that way, because now we have to spend money to develop that property, because right now it's such an open field, there's no way to just come in. We don't have roads there. We can't just go on a road and go, oh look, there's land. No, we've got to build everything we want to make that work. So the other problem was with putting a sports complex there, and I don't want to get super deep into the weeds, but I field weekly comments about people feeling uncomfortable at Walmart and the people who are coming in off the highway. Do we want a situation where we're putting a sports complex out on the highway and those people potentially are stopping there at the sports complex, using those roads for, I don't know, that you create a different situation there. And if people already feel uncomfortable, and I don't know about the Walmart situation, in all fairness, it's not happened to anybody that I personally know, in the sense that they're a family member. It has happened to people that I do know, but not in a personal way. But I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. I don't actually know what's there, but I know are we going to exasperate a already problem and potentially have another problem if we put this facility? Because let's be honest, nobody watches their. We can say they do, but they don't really watch their extra kids there at sports things.
It's
Like
true,
they
let them
really
play and then
like.
they're gone.
I remember, like, you can lose your kid for like an hour there, and you just hope they come back. But do we want that where we have 18-wheelers and people where they have that much direct access to the highway? I mean,
More traffic.
yeah.
I like
Just
your
a
point
thought.
there. Keeping that distance makes the town a lot safer for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, valid point. I would just caution your point you're getting after though. North Korea and China build those sort of phantom towns, hoping business comes in. I think it's really important to let business grow organically. If we can then support with some of that terrorist money, I'm happy to have that conversation. And we did see sales tax revenue increase this year. Just saw that in the newspaper.
I didn't.
Best in Medina County.
But we do have, I mean, if we do bring in businesses, that's what I'm saying, we may need to work with businesses. I mean, I don't, again, not to delve into the weeds and all the rumors, but I know that there have been different people in the past who've been interested in different concepts of things that have been interested in looking here in Devine. And maybe if we reach back out to people with those same similar concepts, maybe it would work. I mean, just something, and then we would, if that was happening, and I think we collect like $300,000 a year off a Quick Trip or something in sales tax. If we could get our sales tax up, then this right here would be an entirely different conversation than what we're having right now. So I do think that is something we need to work on. But to your point, is it simply you build it and they come? I don't know if that's really the case. It takes a lot of marketing and a lot of effort in between. So maybe we should do that first before we commit to doing it. So, but.
Okay, so we need to pick an idea, or at least have an idea this evening on what
How soon do we need to pick this?
February 17th.
By the
Tonight.
17th.
So,
Because they have to do the
So-
paperwork.
yeah, so the bond council has to draft the documents and, to call an election.
February
or some stuff.
17th.
I mean, not a ton of time, but, they probably, by February 10th, so we can come back here the 17th, the last day, have a special meeting before then to call it, but there is some prep involved, so you don't have to decide tonight.
Thank you.
But,
I think I would like to discuss this with people in our district to see what their thoughts are, the residents, and that way we can take a vote at that time, so.
Wes,
No, I think we actually have to have 2 meetings, Dora, right? We actually have to have a vote on it, and then we're gonna actually have to have a meeting to create a resolution on it or something.
Yeah, so we would want to come back to another meeting to get direction from the council and then come back on the 17th.
Okay.
Well, the 17th is the day y'all need it.
Yeah.
I know in talking,
But before then, we need
right,
direction.
but in talking to your office, y'all want about a week ahead of time to go to
Yeah.
work on paperwork, so we don't need it the 17th. We couldn't have a
So you
meeting.
suggested the 10th, is that correct?
It's up to you. I mean, you have to meet the public meetings opening requirements of, 72 hours and all that, so 3 days ahead, so. But you can call special meetings or regular meeting, and, we work around your schedule, whatever works for the city, so. But like I said, bond council has to go through the draft the documents of what the propositions are gonna be, and they have to decide, can it be one if you do, streets and drainage, can it be 2? Are you gonna name the street, there's some of that back and forth, so.
Which y'all can't do at all until y'all have direction.
Exactly.
Alright, so basically, if we were to table it tonight, we would probably still need to meet Tuesday. To try, cause the following Friday is the 17th, and so we need to have whatever we're doing here wrapped up by the 10th, which is next Friday.
make a motion we table this until March.
You can't.
We can't.
Then we vote for a November election, because I don't, nothing on here works, because you.
It's never going to work.
Okay, well then just vote no.
Okay,
My
I still
question-
think we should let the voters have a choice. I mean, that's why we even started this whole process so we need to let the voters have a choice. We just need to pick which projects to let them have a choice on. Because obviously, we're not gonna do streets at 51 million, that's out the window. Sidewalks, now you could do sidewalks, but only in the streets that have curbs.
Right.
And then you can do the multi-purpose project, that's that walkway, or the sports complex. We've got a lot of people saying they want a sports complex.
Absolutely.
Well, this is all y'all's chance, put it on the ballot, see if the voters really want it.
That's a
The only
great
problem
idea.
is you gotta find some land.
Yeah.
That's your next
And
thing.
be aware that if they pass it, you're now 20 years before we discuss any of this again.
Correct.
Which honestly wouldn't necessarily make me feel horrible, because I feel like we just keep discussing it and pushing it out. And really, if we can't make a decision here at this table, then we just need to give it to the voters. And that's one of the reasons why I did approach this back last year and said that I was gonna get this to y'all and work on this. And because You know, we can't continue to have people show up here or people continue to gripe on Facebook or anywhere else and be like, well, they're never going to take care of the road. Well, we aren't taking care of the roads. Well, actually, we can't afford to take care of the roads, to be honest with you. But drainage or sports complex, or, you know, I have people all the time that are like, you know, I wish we had this. That's what this multi-purpose walking sidewalk path thingy is. To give them, instead of doing, you know, sidewalks everywhere, that we would have just kind of one place that they could all go to and run and ride their bike on or whatever. Because like I mean, if not, we keep fielding these people seemingly monthly at meetings. If they really want this, then I mean, I guess we'll let them vote on it. They can go out and make a case for it if this is what they want. So, but again, everybody needs to be very clear that if any item we pick here passes, we won't be able to reapproach basically anything else on this list. So.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we consider the sports complex for the next bond election.
Barry, you got a motion on the floor. You made a motion to table it till March.
Oh, you did make a motion. We gotta go with, sorry, you gotta go with yours first.
No, we good too.
So,
That's dead.
it's not dead, the motion's there, so do you wanna retract the motion?
I'll retract the motion.
All right. Angela, you wanna make the motion again?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we send the sports complex into a bond election so the citizens may select.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion dies. All right. I hate to say this, but do you want to table this and then have 2 meetings next week? Because that would be the next option.
I'd like to make a motion that we submit the drainage projects for the next election.
Okay. We have a motion for drainage. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining?
I'll abstain.
Denise, did you get all that?
So I have 4 ayes?
No.
No, 3.
3.
Debbie, Flipper, and David.
Yeah.
And
A no
Abstain.
and an
No, I
abstain.
said aye.
She said
Oh, you said aye? Oh,
Yes.
it was 4. Okay.
So 4,
That's important also.
4, 0, and 1.
Yes.
One abstain.
Yeah. All right. Motion passes. They'll start paperwork on getting that figured out. We'll still have to have another meeting to actually.
Just for clarity, for the drainage and for the amount of the 15 million.
15.02 million.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
perfect.
gonna be what you'll work on, and
Okay.
then we get to all come back and make this decision all over again in about a week.
Good.
Just, it's only gonna be one item instead of the whole thing. So, again, though, as we move forwards, like I said, if we just need to be very clear with the voters and let them know, like, yes, drainage is important, and you've talked about drainage forever, but what they do on this is gonna affect everything else.
Right.
And they need to be very aware of that. That's not like, oh, we'll do drainage this year, and oh, we'll do parks next year. No, it doesn't work that way. If y'all pass drainage this year, you won't get the other next year, kind of a thing. You gotta wait about 20 years.
And that drainage might be obsolete by that point.
Well, you're always gonna have upkeep and maintenance on drainage, on anything, you know, so, I mean, to an extent.
We could
But
do
I
it.
agree, it's also important.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
something that we
I think
have to
it-
look at.
I
There's
think
been
it's-
people's,
I personally think it's the foundation,
yeah.
you know, so we can go forward, personally.
I mean, we all know, a lot of people want the sports complex.
Oh,
We know
yeah.
this.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I've been running forever,
But after the
too.
bond for it, we're opening the door to the private citizens or organizations
Yeah.
to do their own.
There are many private grants, that would do. I mean, you know, I know that some of the organizations here, I know we've already made the motion and we probably need to stop. But anyways, I know some of the organizations here in Devine who do fundraising. I was just at the Boosters the other night. They for the Medina County, the Devine portion of that, Ag Boosters, they raise about 100,000 a year from what I'm being told. It's like 80,000, 90,000 a year. If some of these organizations teamed up, the sports organizations, and actually aggressively fundraised, within a couple of years, they would have almost all the money they need to create their own, and there'd be no tax burden to the public, and they would be able to manage them any which way they wanted to. They would never have to worry about, oh, does so-and-so at the city, do they have their book open? Can they schedule? No. They could manage it however they wanted. So that is truly we can't fundraise to do drainage, but yeah, some of these other ones, yeah. But again, let's give it to the voters. They're the people who decide ultimately on this.
Yes.
So it will be interesting, I must say. But just like I said, just please be honest with them and let them know like what they're doing and how this will affect anything else that they have come. Because really there's no point in anybody approaching the city about any of the rest of these items if drainage passes in May. Like, maybe we'll work on grants, maybe we'll do some other stuff, but actually approaching and being like, we need to pay for this now, that's not gonna happen. So,
Corey,
yeah.
Ryan was asking, so are we looking at having a meeting on the 7th?
We'll have to have one next week.
And then what was he yelling about? And then we go with, so we could do a resolution?
Yeah, so just the date that you want to authorize the resolution to actually call the election. So that's just what I was checking on, what dates for I guess your next.
Our next council meeting's not till the 21st.
Yeah, so you need to call a special one. So,
Okay.
You could, it doesn't have to be next week. I mean, you could.
We'll do the 14th?
14th's Valentine's Day, you're not gonna want that. I mean, I love y'all, but I don't wanna spend that day with y'all, sorry.
The sooner the better.
15th?
Or we could do next Thursday.
I mean, next Thursday would be the 7th. I'd be okay, I mean, would y'all be okay with just doing this next Thursday and getting it?
Thursday's the
Or sorry, the 9th, and just getting this out of the way?
When we call election, and do all of that, so we don't have to have
Yeah,
another
because they'll be
meeting?
doing the resolution, we'll
Yeah.
have to incorporate the order and the notice, right, to put that bond on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll be able to do that all at the same time, all at the same meeting, potentially next Thursday then?
Okay.
Unless bond council pushes back, but I don't see that they would, so.
All right.
Just, working on it tomorrow
Okay.
morning.
Then I guess we will need to go out for notice then for that on what,
Eight?
no, for the meeting. It'll just be a regular meeting, the 6th?
Yeah, the Monday, post it Monday.
The 6th, okay.
Okay.
If you contact bond council on that day, can you let us know how you feel? Or how y'all, or when will we actually know from the bond council if they push back on us?
Tomorrow you'll know, we'll be in communication.
Okay,
with
all right, so that way we're
I
not,
don't see that there would be, but I don't want to speak for them either.
No.
They should be able to.
okay. Yeah, I just don't want to schedule a meeting and then all of a sudden be like, the 8th, be like, oh, bond council said.
No,
Yep.
no.
So we
We'll make
should
sure
know
they do it
tomorrow.
Do we have to have everybody present?
So yes,
It's gonna be a 4 people or more.
4 people at minimum.
I might
So
get a
if we did
funeral,
on
I don't
the
know.
15th, is that what you're all talking about? I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing
The
now.
9th, 1 week from tonight.
Oh, and a week from tonight.
But David, you're
The
worried
9th.
that you may not be here?
I don't know, I've got a funeral on the 9th in
Okay.
Corpus, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about the 9th either.
Okay.
Then,
Everyone to really kind of be
Yeah,
fair.
we need everybody
it's,
there.
all right, do,
15th?
we can either do what about the 13th, that Monday?
Monday?
Should work.
Okay. You're good with that?
Yeah, that should work.
I can do that too.
Okay,
Yeah, and you said you.
Okay, the
Okay,
13th.
13.
you okay? Okay. Well, let's plan on the 13th then.
I can do it on the 12th.
Same.
Sunday.
I don't know, is it even legal to have meetings on a Sunday, that are city meetings, or like on a weekend? I don't know, we've never tried. Never asked that question, because I'm not planning on doing that.
At 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, February 13th?
That would be, 6 o'clock our normal
I was
time.
gonna say, is it 6 o'clock? I heard 12. I was-
No.
what?
No, that, we were talking about the
That's
12th.
what the date.
Oh,
On Sunday.
no, I won't be
No,
in town on the 12th, so.
It'd be the 13th.
And
Go ahead.
it's Super Bowl Sunday. No.
Oh, absolutely not.
I'm not in town and it's Super Bowl. I can't be here for that.
All right, so the general consensus is at the table is the 13th. The 13th at 6, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Got it.
All right,
At 6 o'clock, right?
yep.
For the 13th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
A motion to adjourn if it's done.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have a cake for Flipper and
All right.
a pie for Flipper and a cake for Angela.
Well, let's
Thank you.
motion real quick and then we'll sing happy birthday. So we have a motion to adjourn. We have a second from Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion passes. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Lead it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Flipper. Happy birthday to you.